Awesome. Pleasure to welcome to the podcast Anderson Moore. Anderson, how you doing?
I'm phenomenal. How are you?
That's what I like to hear. Also phenomenal. Anytime we can chat lacrosse goalie puts me in the phenomenal category. So thanks for coming on the show. I always like to start by hearing your first time in goal. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, my older brother Patrick, he's 4 years older than me, and he played goalie. And he played like goalie like 2 years before I started playing goalie. So I always looked up to him, and before I even started playing, I think I was like I started playing in second grade, and I kind of wanted to get like a head start on like all the other kids because it was like he plays goalie, I'll play goalie too, so then I know what I'm doing when I get on the field. So like my first ever practice, I was like I'm gonna be the goalie, like that's what I did. So I kind of played goalie right away and just went from there.
Yeah. Now you started playing in second grade growing up in Alabama, which, is not, you don't think of lacrosse being that popular there. Was it? I mean, was it kind of like, or was it just something that like my family had played and that's how I got started, or was it, in your area getting pretty popular?
I wouldn't say it's like that popular. I mean, it's like known, like people play it in my area, but it's I wouldn't say popular by any means.
Hmm.
But my our neighbor um played, and he got my oldest brother to play lacrosse, and then my entire family played up until then. And my dad had sticks because he lived in like Northern Virginia, and his dad had some, so we were like familiar with it.
Yeah.
Um, but it was never something that like it wasn't like our area was like everyone's playing lacrosse. It was like
Right.
it was kind of like a niche thing that our family did. So
Yeah. It kind of sounds like my story too, where my dad had two sticks in the garage, but like
mhm,
I grew up in California in the 90s and there was like basically no organized lacrosse, but I'd heard of it. And so I
mhm,
knew it was there. And then when the opportunity came, I pounced on it.
mhm.
So then how did you I guess you then learn the position from from Patrick, right? I mean, he kind of
Yeah.
showed you the ropes. It is kind of amazing how like how similar your guys' stances are. I mean,
Mhm.
like normally there's a little bit of nuance, I guess, in between, but you guys like down to the stance act the same or do it the same. So you learned everything from him?
Yeah. So he kind of had it a lot harder than I did, just because he would like have to. He wasn't like we didn't have like a goalie coach really,
Right.
so he was basically like self-taught, and then he just taught me what he or learned. So he would go through a lot more like kind of figuring out than I did,
Hmm.
which is like I kind of got the good end of the deal, and he kind of had to figure it out as he went along. But yeah, I like whenever I was little, and even like now, like just watching him play, and like we have great conversations about like why we do certain things, and so they all kind of like our styles are very similar, so
Yeah.
um, they just kind of mesh, I guess.
Do you remember some of those early lessons that he taught you? Like, oh man, I've been doing this all wrong, and here's how you really do it. Some of those very first chats or coaching sessions he gave you. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I remember when I was like, this might have been the first time I hopped in goal, but him just like talking me through like the stance and everything. But I'm trying to think like specifically like what he struggled with. I think like especially with his stance, he didn't really no one told him what to do. So when he went through that, he was like a lot wider, and then he couldn't really move, and he brought his feet back in, and then it was like a back and forth until he kind of figured out that it didn't like what worked for him. Um, but I remember like I was really wide too, and then he was like, "You need to bring your feet in," or like I think something that was like kind of revolutionary for like an eighth grader me was like pushing my hips back more, because I used to kind of sit
Yeah.
down in in a chair and I couldn't really move.
Right.
So like I remember talking to him about that. And he was like, yeah, I've started doing the same thing, especially like when he got to college. Um, he kind of figured out the position a little more because he went to Lynchburg and Coach Kadelka there was a goalie and he helped him a lot. So
Hmm.
just kind of learning from that helped me, helped him, which helped me. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, like what a resource. Like he goes off to
yeah.
college, gets this awesome goalie coaching, and then you come back and be like, all right, teach me what you learned.
Mm-hmm.
And I know exactly what you're talking about with those hips, because a lot of times you see young lacrosse goalies, especially like they're just so like, up, like they got a nice knee
Yeah.
bend going on, right? But they're
Mm-hmm.
just so up vertical, and they don't have those hips pushed back. And
Yeah.
um, it's a key to making saves, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, especially when the shot's coming, like those hips have a tendency to creep forward, and then like once they move forward, you're just totally locked. You're not in an athletic position. You can't move, right?
Yeah. I mean, like the way I kind of explain it when I coach is like your hips are like your power source. If I bend my knees, like, yeah, that's great. But if my hips are like forward, I have no leverage or push. There's no power. Um, and like you think of like a linebacker, he's not sitting in a chair. He's back. He's ready to like uh, move laterally or forward wherever he needs to go.
Right.
So like kind of thinking like that helped me a lot, especially when I was younger. So
Yeah, love that. What are some other things that you say to the youngsters when you're coaching them, like right out of the gate when they're just getting started?
yeah, so like when I coach little kids, I just try to like figure out where they are and like what they struggle with. I feel like the biggest thing that like especially younger kids, it might not be so much like stance or whatever. Like a lot of them, it's like physically like maybe they can't step as much, but like I feel like especially as they like go into like middle school and everything, they put a lot of pressure on themselves.
Mm.
So I feel like talking them through mentally, I feel like that is a lot more beneficial. Like when I'm doing a lesson or whatever, and talking them through that than like physically. Because if you can figure out like the mental side, I feel like that's such a huge portion of like I've seen like goalies that don't have like perfect mechanics or whatever, and they play a whole lot better than a guy that looks like he'd be better, but he's too in his own head or whatever. So like being able to kind of give a goalie the ability to just like reset and have that like short memory, I
Hmm.
feel like takes them the next step. They figure that out. Everything else is kind of easy. Like so,
Right.
just when I coach, I wanna coach them more mentally, and then the physical side that's gonna come. I can coach that easy.
Right.
That's just like figuring it out, but mentally is something I try to help kids out with.
It's a great point. It's a great point, right? I mean, they say like the positions, whatever, 80% mental, 90% mental. And yet, like when you're getting those initial lessons, a lot of times people just go 100% physical, right? And they teach
Mm-hmm.
them how to say, and so even like coming up 50-50 would be a tremendous benefit. And I
Yeah.
tend to agree that the mental game needs to be coached more, right? And stronger. What
Mm-hmm.
like how specifically would you teach a goalie to get over a goal? Because I mean, like you said, there's a lot of young goalies beat themselves up. They give up a goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're feeling bad. They're in their own head. They feel like the team hates them. They
Yeah.
feel like the loss was their fault. How do you then coach them to get over that next shot mentality?
Yeah. I mean, like it's very subjective, like from kid to kid, because a lot of kids have different ways of like maybe they're like a finger, they point fingers at their defense,
Hmm.
but it's really like about that, or they just like their body language droops and I can relate more with that where it's like you kind of feel the pressure that it's like your fault. Um, and just being able to like tell a kid like you're in a position where you can change the outcome of games like that, like if you play well, and it's just about okay, I see one shot, or like you go into a game, right, and you're not too worried about like technique or like if the other team's very good. Nothing really like external. Like a lot of times, like what I tell goalies is control what you can control. Like go
Hmm.
into a game and go have as much fun as possible.
Right.
And you'll come out of the game. And even if you didn't play like that great, like you'll come out and you'll feel better. And eventually, like you kind of stack those and you're gonna play good eventually. Like when you play a game, you're playing two games. You're playing one like a physical game, like I'm trying to save the ball, and then two, you're playing a game against yourself, where it's like you get scored on. How do you respond to that? And if I can fall back on what got me to saving the ball in lessons or with my friends or before, right? If I can fall back on that, and even if I'm not saving the ball, sometimes you just have bad days. If I could
Hmm.
fall back on that, my preparation, my process, I'm gonna build consistency that way. So like what I always tell whenever I'm like coaching club or like kid in a game, it's just like go out there, have as much fun as possible, be loud, have a ton of energy, right? And just get the next ball. And I promise you, you're gonna play a lot looser. You might not save every ball, you might not play great, but you're gonna come out
Yeah.
of the game and you're gonna feel a lot better than you did if you were worried about like your technique the whole time or your positioning and all that stuff that a lot of times I see people like get so wrapped up in
Yeah.
that it just makes the position not that fun. And it's the best position on the field. I don't know why you wouldn't want to have fun with it.
Amen, brother. Amen. Right. Yeah. I mean, as I think back to like all the best games that I've ever played, like that has been the theme is that I was just having so much fun. And I wasn't thinking about like, oh, if I give up this next goal, we're going to be down. We might lose. We'll be down 2 goal. I wasn't thinking about the future. Like my save percentage might be shot. Wasn't thinking about the past. It was just like, there's the ball. All right, here. He just passed it over there. Right. You're just right in the moment and making all the saves. And it's crazy. Like sometimes you probably had this where like you play an incredible game and you don't even realize it, right? Just the game's over. And then people kind of come up to you and be like, hey, Anderson, like awesome game. And you're like, oh, yeah, like I guess it was because I was just so focused in the moment on making those saves, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I love it. Cool. What other mental game lessons? Let's stick on the topic of mental game. Any other mental game lessons come to mind? I mean, you've played now Division 1 lacrosse your first year. I imagine you've gone through some ups and downs. Like, how did you get through those downs?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of what like I kind of had a rude awakening to the college mental game because my first game we played Loyola, I gave up like 18 goals, which I I don't think I'd ever done in like high school before, and we lost like 18 to like 11. It was brutal, and you go back and you watch the tape, and I'm just like imploding. All right, maybe I didn't see it, but like mentally in my head, it was like first half, like played I played good in like the first quarter, I felt like, but I gave up like one I maybe shouldn't have. And I let that kind of like affect me. And our team didn't play that well, but like I just gave up like goals and they would just like snowball. And I was
Hmm.
just like tossing and turning in my head about like trying to grab onto something that I could just like fixate on that would like make me play better, I guess. And what I learned from that was like I got away from in that game from the thought process that had got me there. Like I was when I go into games, I'm thinking to myself, I like run to the cage and I think be me and then have fun. And those are the two things that I kind of grab onto whenever I play. And I'm not really worried about like tracking the ball so much or like saving, do all that stuff. I figure I've seen about a million reps and once I get in the game, it's just about making one save. And you make the one save, you make that. But in that game, I kind of got away from that because I guess I didn't trust myself enough. And that kind of just, I played bad and then I kept playing worse.
Hmm.
And as the season went along, I just kind of thought to myself, it's probably, you're kind of stuck with this like thinking, this thought process of like how you're going to play. And so I figured I'm just going to trust this as much as I possibly can. And then if I play bad or anything else, it's just like whatever, but I'm not gonna get away from what got me here. So
Yeah.
kind of trusting that and then trusting my preparation from that week. That was a huge thing that kind of helped me. I would say I was like incredibly consistent. Like I definitely still had bad games. But it helped me get through some of those games where it was like, okay, I'm not playing well, but I'm just gonna get this next one. And I think down the stretch, especially like I've played some not some of my best in like the Big East tournament, but I was able to kind of stay in the game long enough to make just like one save when my team needed it.
Hmm.
So that was something that I could kind of grab onto, and I think it helped me later on. I kind
Yeah.
of rambled there, but
No, it's all good. There's a lot of cool points I wanted to pull out of there. One was, I mean, it's just so weird how the human mind works. Like you can practice every single day and do all these reps and have all these great games, and then you still doubt yourself, right? And then you're going into a club tryout and you're like, hey, I'm really nervous. What should I do? And it's like trust your training, right?
mhm,
Trust all the work that you've put in, and now it's time to go out there and have fun and get paid, right?
yeah,
So I love that point. I thought that was really good. And then yeah,
mhm,
that idea of like even if you've let in 17 goals, right? I mean, it could be that last save that your team needs. And so I save one or two or three right at the end and win it for my team. So a lot of times it's just that timing, which I like quite a bit.
mhm, yeah. And
Go ahead.
I remember something I heard was like it not all saves are created equal. So it's like
Right.
I think you're gonna if you want to be like great or whatever, like it's not about like how many, it's about like when you make them, that's gonna kind of like seal your fate. Like maybe you're like a 60% goalie, but like everyone remembers someone that comes to mind is like Alex Rode in the 2019 Final Four. He was incredible. And like I don't think he like got pulled early in the season. And it wasn't
Hmm.
about like how he played then. He showed up when it mattered. So that's kind of thought that comes to mind.
Yeah. Um, Love it. I want to talk about film review because I know that you presented at the last lacrosse goalie summit and it was awesome. Highly recommend everyone go back and watch that one. But one of the things I learned is your love or your passion for just watching lacrosse. Talk to me about that. And I remember during COVID you talked about well a lot of people said, oh, this is horrible, because I don't get to play. You said, well, this to me was like one of the best things that ever happened for my goalie game, because I could just focus on, studying and getting out in the backyard and playing. I'd love to hear about your review of film and how you use that.
Yeah. So like during COVID, uh, obviously I didn't really have much to do. So all I did was just play lacrosse or watch lacrosse and then go like get shot on by tennis balls from my brother in the backyard. Um, and I think at one point I had watched like almost every goalie's like highlight tape from like my class and just like I just watched so many because I was like I kind of maybe it was like a little bit of like a comparative thing where I like wanted to see where I lined up with everyone else. It's like it's probably not the best thing to do, but it's what I did. And I kind of you like when you watch a lot of like goalie highlight tapes, you kind of pick up on things that like other goalies did. Like I remember I saw in like one kid's tape he like picked off a ball from X, like a tagman threw it to X and he picked it off. And I thought
Mhm.
I'd never seen anyone do that before. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was like, oh wait, I want to do that.
Yeah,
That's cool. Or like
right.
maybe the way certain kids play different shots or how they move, or maybe like their stance, something like little like that. Seeing that I think is cool. And then I just love lacrosse. I'm genuinely like addicted to it. Like so even if I'm not watching like a goalie's highlight tape, I'll watch a game. I want to know everything about like how a defense operates, what a goalie does, what
Hmm.
the offensive player like. I want to know the whole game, And so like just doing that, I think you learn a lot about how a defense moves, and that kind of helped my IQ because when I played in Alabama high school, I'm almost playing like Xbox. Like I'm trying to tell my defender he's got to go help out the crease, and then I'm gonna save the ball. It's like you're doing a lot, which maybe wasn't the best thing for like because I just probably needed to save the ball, but I think it kind of helped me more or less be more of a leader um, on like my defense, and just kind
Yeah.
of having that edge. I think is just great, and I can kind of you can kind of predict plays before they happen just because you've seen it so many times.
Great point. Yeah. I mean, the more you watch lacrosse, the higher your lacrosse IQ gets. And I'm like you, where I watch just this little subtle nuance of like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, oh, like look how like he's in his stance and the ball's no longer a threat. So he shifts his hand down to the bottom of the shaft to be ready to reach out to pick that ball off if it comes, right? Just kind of a surprise thing. Just that little nuance. And I love that. I love little aspects of that, or like look how he plays that his positioning when the ball's coming up the hash shot.
Mm-hmm.
Just little elements that you can then take out to the field and sort of incorporate into your own game. And it sounds like that's what you did. I wanted to ask about I think we talked about this in the lacrosse goalie summit, but there can be that um um like comparative aspect of where like I'm now like comparing myself to these other goalies instead of focusing on my own game. How did
Mm-hmm.
you not let that impact you?
I feel like when I like, especially like when you go to like club tournaments and like all that thing, I feel like the best thing you can do to like avoid comparing was a lot of times like I was buddies with a lot of these other goalies because I went to Goalie Smith and you like train with them, and they're all like great dudes. So it like I'm like, okay, yeah, you're competing for like the same like spots at like colleges, but like I genuinely enjoyed like when they played good. Like maybe in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, but like it was really cool to watch them like ball out, and like maybe you play a game and the other goalie's balling out. Like you run by to the sideline, you're like, dude, you're killing it. Like whatever. I
Right.
remember our first game against, or it was our second game. It was against Hopkins, and Chase Erlin, who's like buddies with my brother, is like, "Good job, Andy." I was like, "Oh, that's so nice." Like I'm like a freshman. He's like, this is like a 6 year of college. He's played about a million games,
Hmm.
and um, he was just like being nice. So like when you play a game or like you're doing all that kind of stuff, it's not it's not you versus the other goalie. Like y'all aren't. It's your team. It's not like a face off where it's like you versus the other guy. It's like a one on one. You aren't playing each other. So if like I can like encourage the other guy, like say they're balling out and I'm not having my best, um, like if I encouraging, that's like energy. And if I can kind of get my energy level up to a point where it's like I'm not down in the dumps about how I'm playing, I feel like that can kind of get you out of that like comparison where it's like, oh, he's playing good and I look terrible. It's like, oh no, he's playing awesome. Like, good job, man. And then like
Yeah.
now my body language is up. Now
Right.
I'm ready to kind of I can make the next save. Like I know it. It's like kind of get you back to where you were. Don't let like another goalie playing well suck the energy out of you. Take his energy, use it.
Great point. Great point. Yeah. It kind of makes me think of like my own business, right? Where I am coaching goalies, and there's other coaches in the space. I mean, I'm rooting for those guys so hard, right? Like Goalie Smith, for example, probably a competitor, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm rooting for those guys so much because one, then it makes me feel good, and like you said, then that's the energy that I bring into what I do,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed
Yeah,
to
it's
like
like
the negativity of like, oh man, like I can't believe that guy's doing so good, or I can't believe that guy's doing this. Like there's just, the sport is way too small for that. And like when, what's that expression? When the rising tide, like it lifts everybody's boats, right?
yeah, and I feel like it's a lot of it's just like perception. Like you can choose to perceive this as like he's playing good, I'm playing bad. This is terrible, or it's like this is an opportunity for me to play great or like show out, or he's playing great, I can use that energy. it's
Right.
it's more it's like if you choose to let it like suck the energy out of you, make you feel bad, like I feel like that's kind of more like a mental thing, and you can avoid that. I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's going back to the mental game. Like a lot of it is just how you perceive things, right? You could
Mm-hmm.
have like a horrible game and perceive it as like I'm a horrible goalie, nobody likes me. You could have a horrible game and be like, all right, what that's a great learning opportunity for me. Like, how can
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have bad games. So this is a cool opportunity to learn how to get over those bad games, right? And go
Mm-hmm.
back out there and have a strong game that my next showing. So
Yeah.
so much of it is just perception.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. What else about film review? So if someone wants to then, I'm a young goalie. I hear Anderson say like film review, like just watching goalies. How should I go about it? How should I attack it? Do you think? What are some tips there?
Yeah. So like, and like in individual sense, like I watch like we film our practices, we'll film our game, and I'll kind of watch my own film. And when I go about that, I'm kind of a lot of it's like very like contextual. Like as a goalie, you can't really dictate like what a shooter's doing. So when I'm watching film, I got to watch like what the shooter did and kind of think back to what I was thinking maybe there
Hmm.
and see what I did on film. Um, and then a lot of times, like when I watch film on a game, especially like when I play bad, I never really play like I come out and I don't have a good day game and I thought I played like the worst game ever. And then I'll go back and I'll watch film. I'm like, okay, I didn't play great, but it wasn't like the end of the world. Like I wasn't like the worst goalie I've ever seen, but when I was in the
Yeah.
game, I felt like that. So kind of having that mindset helped a lot. But that was kind of like a sidetrack. When I like watch film, it's like a lot of times I'm looking at like maybe my feet or my balance on like different shots or thinking back to like maybe what I was thinking. Cause after every game, I'll go watch like goalie film with my goalie coach, Coach Shriver, and we'll kind of like talk through like maybe what I saw there and like why I did that sort of thing and having someone to just like have a conversation with and bounce back and forth.
Hmm.
Um, I think is like beneficial because it can kind of highlight some things that maybe you didn't notice. And like he's like, okay, maybe next time you see this shot, you can play it this way or that sort of thing. But like from an individual standpoint, like watching myself, that's kind of what I do when it comes to like watching like maybe a random game or like I'm watching like another goalie. Like I watch Intamin. I'm like, okay, how's he play on his pipes? Why does he do this? What's his thought process? Kind of thinking through that. I can't play like he does because he's like 6'4" and I'm not. He's probably taller. Um, but like kind of taking away things from like some other goalies' games that I think I could maybe add, or just like looking at it and being like, oh, that's really impressive. I can't play like that.
Hmm.
Like who's Penn State goalie, Jack Frasian is incredible with his feet. I can't play with my feet like he can. I wish I could, but he's really interesting to watch because it's like, I don't know how you do that, but it's incredible. Same with watching like Blaze Reardon. I love the way he plays, but I can't play like it. So I kind of hate it, but it's incredible. So like it's like a love hate relationship, but
I
like
know. Yeah.
I appreciate it a lot because it proves to me because it's like it you don't have to look a certain way to play goalie. Blaze is like never set, it looks like, and then he's just like standing there and he'll just snatch the ball out of there. I'm like
Right.
unreal. Like I could never do that. But um that's kind of what I'm looking at when I watch people. Maybe it's just like pure appreciation for like how they play, or it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's really neat. Like maybe I want to go try that in my backyard with like tennis balls or anything like that. Like me and my brother used to like go like imitate like Kyle Bernlohr in the backyard. And I think that's like kind of a cool thing, but you also like, oh, this is actually cool what he does. And I can do
Right.
this too. So
Right. What when you first start a new technique, it's uncomfortable,
mhm.
right? And but at what point do you like give up with that technique, going like, all right, that's just not for me? And at what point do you like would you recommend I just kind of push through until eventually it does become comfortable? You know what I mean? Like if
Hmm.
I try to play like Blaze, like you said, he's just, a lot of goalies are like, in the squat, knees bent, and like you said, Blaze is just kind of standing there. And if I'm not that might be a bad example because that's not
Yeah.
uncomfortable, but like let's say I try and do a wide base and I go, man,
Hmm.
this is really uncomfortable, right? At what point do I go back to my other stance versus sticking through until it does become comfortable, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to like stances, when I like want to teach a goalie like how you get into a stance, I feel like it's strictly like a comfort thing. Like if I get into like a wide base and I'm extremely uncomfortable, it's probably just like your body telling you I can't move. And I think like as you progress and like your body kind of changes, like my stance has gotten wider as I've continued to play, but it doesn't feel like it's gotten wider. It's like my stance doesn't feel like it's changed much, but my legs have just gotten wider because maybe I've lifted more, I've done mobility, and this is what my body has decided is the most athletic and comfortable position to be in. Um, but when it comes to like playing like a different technique, like maybe I play a higher arc or something like that, and you're like, this doesn't feel right. I feel like you can give it like if I want to go out and shoot or like get shots, and I try it the whole time, and I do that like maybe twice, and I come out of there and I'm like, yeah, I can't play like this. I feel like you can kind of scrap it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even if it's like, but if it's uncomfortable and then at some point like within like this made up timeline it like can kind of click, like you do have to give yourself time to figure that thing out, but once it becomes just like something that you're like, okay, my body can't, or you get like a second opinion from someone and they're like, yeah, this doesn't really look like it's working for you after 2 sessions, let's just say 2 sessions
Yeah.
or like however many reps or whatever, I feel like you can kind of scrap it. But that is an interesting question because I feel like you kind of have to feel it out a little more. And it's not something that's just like, this is a set amount of time that you can try something out. If it doesn't work in that time,
Yeah.
you have to scrap it because I don't know if that's necessarily true. I feel like some things just kind of take time. Like I've tried to play with my feet and I've tried for like a year and I just can't do it. So I've kind of just like scrapped it. But um, at some point, it's just like you kind of have to know what your game is, and maybe this
Right.
just
And
doesn't
and just
fall
feel
in
like
there.
how if it's comfortable or not. But yeah, I mean, give
Mhm.
yourself at least a couple practices trying it,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. So at
yeah.
least a couple. But yeah, oftentimes you do know because it's like you said, a lot of about goalie is one being athletic and being comfortable. And
Mhm.
if you're not that, then you're gonna
It's gonna hurt.
you're
It's not
gonna
gonna be
yeah,
fun.
you're gonna give up a lot of goals.
Yeah.
What about watching your tape? You got the hop going on. I call it right. That little resetting of the weight, that little tiny
Mhm.
tiny jump. Talk to me about that technique. When you started it and what that does for you.
Yeah, I'll say when I do that, like I kind of tend to hop into my stance because I find that it just like my feet just go to where they naturally want to go. But when it comes to like being in, I don't really hop before. Like I know a lot of people talk about like patting the feet before a shot, or I'm pretty sure like Galloway talked about it.
Hmm.
Like way back when it's like you kind of take a little hop step right before the windup. I don't do that just because it's like I don't want any pre-shot movement when the shooter's like winding up. I tend to be a jumpier goalie just because like after a while I just have to reset my feet. But if a shooter's winding up, I'm trying to stay as still as possible. But it's just like I've always been very up and down, jumpy, have to reset my feet a decent amount. But as soon as a shooter tries to like wind up, I try not to move my feet.
You're set.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. So you use it more like, when you're just taking steps on the arc, like
Mm-hmm.
sort of land in
Yeah.
that hop to help the balance, I guess.
Yeah. And I feel like I've tried to get rid of it a little, like not as much, but like especially like when someone throws like the ball forward and I turn, I might have a tendency to like hop into my turn and then you can just get beat with speed.
Mm.
Um, so just turning and being set is something that I've tried to get better at. Because like off a pass, I'm probably a worse goalie than if like someone just shoots it on the run. Uh, so that that's just something I've tried to improve.
Yeah, it is interesting. I also grew up watching Galloway and learned it from him. And I also played tennis, right? And in tennis, like when you're returning a serve, like you do like match, you do the time the hop like right as the ball is being served at you. So he makes contact. It's kind of when I'm landing and then I go. And so I did do that like pre-shot and it worked for me, but I know like
Mhm.
I also played in a different era. And people are shooting way harder, more accurate now. So I do know a lot of goalies like you and other goalies I've talked to are like, I want to be as set as possible um to eliminate any pre-shot movement.
Yeah, and I found like especially when you play like a Canadian player or someone that just like throws a lot of hitches,
Yeah.
it's really like you can kind of get deceived because a shooter can kind of like maybe change their timing on the way they shoot or
Yeah,
throw a
yeah.
hitch in there. And if I'm trying to time up my feet with like
They'll
my
get you.
the
Yeah.
pad or whatever, you'll just get out of position or
Yeah.
fly out of the cage or something.
It's a good point.
Um, so I don't think it's like the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely something that I choose not to do. So
Yeah. What would you say you're working on in your goalie game right now?
I'd say definitely like when I go out and I train, I want like I get shots or whatever. Um, like I'm trying to I want to get better in like quicker situations. So like when I was going into college last year, a lot of what I wanted to do was like shots off of like a turn or something that was really unpredictable that like I just had to be like prepared for and kind of playing in those really like unpredictable moments was what I was trying to do. So like a lot of times I'd have like a shooter, we just like roll out like a million balls and the shooter would just like pick it up and he could either fake it, he could do whatever. And then I just kind of have to react off of that. Or a lot of times I like to do shots off a feed from like X. And I want the shooter to get it out as fast as possible just so I can get my head around, turn and be balanced and then react because a lot of times I found I'm worse off a pass than like if someone just is holding the ball for a really long time. So
Hmm.
just that sort of thing, um, being balanced, not being tense when they're like wind up or like you turn, and a lot of times you can like shrink.
Yep. Yeah.
So just trying to get better at playing at a faster pace,
Yeah.
I think.
Love it. Awesome. Um, I think you mentioned before we hit record that you're gonna go to Goalie Smith's training camp
Mhm.
and then you're also coaching some clinics yourself. If there's a young goalie listening that's maybe gonna hit up one of those camps, what are some tips you could share on how to get the most out of a clinic or a camp as a goalie?
Mhm. I'm trying to think like when I the best thing about those clinics is one like you get great coaching, but two you get to see like other good goalies in your age group. And I feel like my favorite thing about like going to those kind of camps is just talking to other people and getting their perspective on like how they play certain shots or like how they track the ball or anything like that. I think is can be super beneficial because a lot of times like especially in college or in high school you're kind of in this bubble where you can't really you have like three other guys you can talk to or less or like your one goalie coach from your hometown that's telling you to do the same thing over and over again and it's just like
Right.
not really working.
Right.
um so when you go to these kids like asking as many questions as possible and then like going home and writing it down I think is like the the best thing you can do because like maybe you can't play like some of these other people can but you can like see what they do and find it interesting. Like I was talking about like watching Frasian play or Intamin, it's like is really interesting. I want to see how they play that. Maybe you can't do it, but just like being able to try new things and it kind of being like a safe space is one of my favorite things to do, especially like when I go train with Goalie Smith or um, anything like that.
Yeah. So you learn new things, take
Hmm.
notes, the relationships, that's
Hmm.
huge, right? And yeah, and I don't know about you, but like I didn't go to many lacrosse goalie camps, at least not the level that they have right now, but I did go to wrestling camps. And like
Hmm.
after I left, I just felt so inspired. Like I
Hmm.
was just so like pumped up and like wanted to train and wanted to it just kind of gave me like an adrenaline shot of inspiration. And I imagine a lot of goalies will leave Goalie Smith or other camps feeling that way, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to their first ever like TG camp back in 2019, and I came out of that. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like I got to I meet some of the kids and I'm still friends with them now, and they're all like great guys. And I'm like, you just like have so much fun, and it just makes the position so much like you go to tournaments and you're like friends with all these guys that you met at Goalie Smith, and um, you like come back and you're like, oh, I saw this kid do this. I want to work on that. Um, all that kind of stuff. I think just makes it the goalie position. It pushes it forward, and it also just makes it like more fun individually.
Yeah. And it's a great point too about, meeting other goalies and being able to talk to other
Mm,
goalies. I mean, you were fortunate enough to have your brother, still do, right? And to chat with him through anything. But a lot of goalies don't have that. And so,
mm,
just a lot of times, like when you're going through something, whether it be mental or even physical, like just like the idea of like verbalizing it and saying it out loud is like all the all the therapy you need, right?
mm. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
like.
I know I've done that with like some things that have been going on, and maybe even just chatting with my wife and like just hearing myself saying it out loud. I'm just like, wait a minute, like I don't believe that. That's stupid.
Yeah, you're like thinking this one thing, and then you're like, wait, and you say it out loud, and you're like, that's actually dumb. I can't do
Right.
that. I like when I went to tournaments, I'd do that with like my mom, and I was like, oh, wait, you're right. That was dumb. I don't know what I was doing.
Yeah. Love it. Talk to me a little bit more about the season that you guys had. So I think you hit on it, started out pretty rough. But yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the recent season with Georgetown.
So I was fortunate enough to start um, at the beginning of the season, and our first game was Loyola, and it didn't necessarily go too well. Um, and the great thing about that was I just got to learn a lot from that experience because you learn a lot from just like losing and losing in a way like that. Like I completely imploded. So quite frankly, but the great thing was I knew I wasn't going to do that again. So just like as especially early on in the season, for me it was just like kind of finding that rhythm and like what worked, and then just going 1-0 on every shot. Just like if
Hmm.
I'm gonna save this next shot, okay, I didn't save it, I gotta get the next one. I know that. So I feel like that was a huge thing for me, and our team just continued to get better. And like I think after Loyola, we played Hopkins, which is I got to play against my brother, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um, but like it was just kind of after that game, I felt like I kind of settled in a little more, um, and just like you learn things as you go, and that was great. I'm trying to think, like our season was really long, so
Yeah. Well,
I
then you
think
guys
like
beat Notre Dame. Not
yeah, we
bad.
did we did beat Notre Dame. That was very cool.
Yeah.
Um, like I think for me, it was just like you play against these guys that you've watched on TV for like 4 years, and you're like, oh wait, like I'm pretty good too. Like they're great, like incredible players, but like, hey, I'm a good player too. Like
Yeah.
it's I could compete with these guys, which was awesome, and just kind of finding ways to be more consistent and trusting myself throughout the season. That's something that I want to continue to build on. Is just being more consistent as I play and pushing my threshold higher. Like having my worst games not being so bad and having my best games be better
Mm.
is something that like I'm continually trying to work on. And also just like the guys like in our goalie room, just Michael Scharfenberger and Luke Schlank and Todd Kennedy, all those guys that they were in my corner when I was playing terrible, and they were there when I was playing great, and they're just pushing me, and just great guys to just talk to, like especially when I'm struggling. Like I'd go to Sharp and he'd be like, just make one, and it was like he's got me, I got him, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, that was huge for me, especially being a freshman. And I was also lucky enough to have like one of the best defenses in the country, so they made me look better than maybe I was. So like we had a lot of veterans, and I mean just like great dudes that knew how to play lacrosse, and Coach Warren put a great defense in front of me, so made my job a lot easier, and we ended up with a Big East championship. So hopefully we can build on that in my second year as well.
Love it. Congrats. Yeah. I was going
Yeah.
to ask about starting off giving up the 18 goals and then you guys lose to Hopkins um by 2, giving up 11 goals. Some goalies, especially as a freshman, might feel like, "Oh man, the hook is coming," right? Like they're going to pull me. I'm going to lose my job.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that coaches said to kind of reinsure you, or was it just your mental game of thinking like, I belong here. I've earned this position, trusting my training. Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely thought I was going to get pulled in the Loyola game. I'm going to be honest. Um, but kind of like after that game, I talked to like the coaches, and they're like, we trust you. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, you go out there and just get better is like the kind of thing. And I think they trusted me to figure it out. And probably the most reassuring thing was I remember we were watching, I forgot what game it was. It was like it was between two very good teams. I forget. And it was Syracuse Duke. And I remember like one of the goalies got pulled or something. And my coach was like, Coach Warren, he was like, I don't know why they do that. Because when you get in those moments, like it's just about like the guy's got to figure it out, and you kind of got to trust them to figure it out because he's been great for you all season long. And that was something that was really reassuring, especially down the stretch, because and like the Big East semis, we played Providence, and I was not playing great, like at all. Like it was like we were gonna lose. We ended up winning in overtime, and I kind of like in my back of my mind, I was like, I knew I was gonna save the ball, and I knew I had the trust of my defense and my coaching staff because like he kind of said those things, and I was like at like the end of the fourth quarter overtime, it was just like I'm gonna save the ball. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
it for a fact, and I like had like I ended up being able to like save, and we ended up having a save at overtime, and we ended up winning. And in my mind, like I struggled the entire game, but when it came to that moment, I knew I was gonna make the save no matter who shot it, where I was going, because everyone else believed in me, and I believed in myself. So
Yeah.
that was something that I kind of clung to in like the moments when it wasn't so great, because I knew that the people around me had confidence in me.
The good
So
mentality. The good
yeah.
mentality, right? They have the confidence in me. Like they've given me the starting role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, right? When it could have been anybody else. And now I've got to have confidence in myself.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there. What about your tips for overtime games? Because you guys, I mean, you basically ran through the Big East in overtime games,
Yeah.
and then also beat Notre Dame in overtime as well. So 3-0. Any, is there? What would you say to a young goalie going into an overtime game?
Yeah. I mean, for me, like going into a lot of those games, it was just like cool because in high school, I don't think I played an overtime game, and at least in like high school or anything. And then I show up and it's like my third or fourth game in, and you're in overtime against Notre Dame, and I'm like, okay, either way, this is like the coolest experience I've ever been a part of, and I was just like, I'm gonna just telling myself like, play loose. This is really cool.
Yeah.
Like kind of having that like gratitude piece to it, and then going out and trusting yourself. And I feel like, especially in overtime, it's just like you just have to commit. Like I would rather just like go and commit to a shot than be late. Um, so kind of thinking about that helped me out a lot, and having like having the trust. I think I made a save in all three overtimes. Only one of them was like a legit save because like I think against Notre Dame they had a pretty bad shot selection, and then against we won in overtime in the Big East, and it was just like a end of the shot clock, like huck at the cage. So,
Hmm.
but I like even if they shot like a better shot, like I knew I was gonna save it. Like it was just like maybe I wouldn't, but like it was so irrational that I thought I was gonna save it because it like I can't control much, but I just knew. Like it was like I've trained my entire life to be here to win a conference championship, do all this stuff. Like you might as well throw all your chips on the table and go fly around and trust yourself. So
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's something I've talked about with a bunch of goalies on this show is just like having that irrational confidence.
mhm.
It's kind of like the key to being a goalie, especially when you're just starting out, because like you've done nothing to earn it. Right? Yeah,
Mhm.
there's no reason you should be confident. And yet,
Yeah.
like, if you can go out there with this mindset of like I'm gonna make this next save. Like I can
Yeah.
save these, then you're gonna
Yeah.
actually do a lot better. And then it's this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Where then if you go
Mhm.
out with that mindset, then you make the saves, and now I can kind of build that confidence on something. So it's kind of cool to hear you say that
Mhm.
as well, right? Your irrational confidence.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of being goalie is just like it not making sense at all. Like you can like kind of like you can play in front of like a terrible defense and it can be their fault, but you still have to have like that undeniable sense that it's like I'm gonna save the next one. Like it, there's no reason why I should.
Right.
Like maybe we're down like
Right.
8-0 or something, but I know I'm gonna save it. I just know it. Like it's
Right.
I've done it before. I could do it again. This is what I live for. That kind of thing.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Well, Anderson, thank you so much for coming on and kind of
Mhm.
talking through your experience. If you're listening to this and you want to hear more about, I didn't ask any recruiting questions because that's kind of the topic that we hit on at the Goalie Summit. So definitely check that out if you're interested. One thing I did want to ask about because I remember it was really interesting was your sort of your pregame ritual or pregame routine. Can you talk
Mhm.
us through that?
Yeah. So for especially for home games, we played most of our games at noon. So like 2 hours before, it's like at 10, I would go to like our weight room and I would stretch, and then I would power clean before every game. And then I think I did that just because I like power cleaning a lot. And I think I'm pretty good at it too. Humble brag. It was like it's like the only lift I'm like good at.
Yeah.
And I just like it puts me in kind of like a good mood, and I feel like I gets like a sweat going, which I thought was kind of important because I
Yeah.
didn't really want to be stiff too much going into the game. And then I go out on the field and get a toss with one of the other goalies on my team, and then I would go back to the locker room, and I had a certain playlist that I listened to the whole time, and I'd go out in like the hallway and just like bounce a ball repeatedly just to kind of kill time. And then we had like a team prayer, and then at that point it was ready to go out to go like do like the actual warm up. But those are kind of like what I did before every game. And then at away games, I would just try and like instead of I couldn't clean at away games, so I would just try to
Right.
jump around a little more, do something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Awesome. Yeah, it makes sense, right? Get the muscles firing. And
mhm,
also, if you like it, like, there's a lot to be said about putting yourself into a good mood.
mhm.
It goes back to that theme of having fun, right? And if I'm in a good mood, then I'm more likely to have fun.
Yeah, yeah. That was like a huge piece for me. Just like listening to music, being around my teammates, getting a sweat going, and just like having fun. So
Yeah. And you drop some of the bangers that you listen to. A lot of people think it's the fast, energetic music, and you got
I got
this
chirped. I got chirped by some of my boys for having like the music. I was like, I
the
don't.
smooth slow jams.
Yeah, I don't. It kind of
All
hurt my
right.
feelings.
Yeah, well, you have to share that playlist with me
Uh-huh.
after this, and then I'll let it out because a lot of people were on the opposite end. They're like, "That's a winning playlist right there."
Yeah.
Cool. What about the gear? I know you do Clips 3. Are you using the Clips 3 head?
Yes, I did use it all spring, and I thought it was phenomenal. It was great. And then I had like some Maverick shaft, and I've been using ECD or not ECD STX memory mesh
Yeah,
because my brother strings all my sticks, and that's the mesh he uses. So,
nice.
um, and then the pattern I kind of had like a low U in the bottom, which I hadn't used in a while. I was normally like a 2 U's and a shooter and a nylon, but for the spring, I used to have the low U, and I remember it did pretty well. I was like, oh, I'll try it, and I didn't give up that many rebounds. It kind of gobbled it up, and it threw really well. So I kind of stuck with it. Um,
Yeah.
I like it a lot. So
All right. And then how about the gloves?
yes, so Georgetown, we're a Maverick school, so I have the Maverick M. I think they're either M5s or M6s.
Yeah.
They've been great for me actually. So I don't really. I've never had an issue with them. I
Do you
know
wear
like
any do you wear any other like thumb protection or you just go straight goalie
no,
gloves?
I've never had to do that. I
Okay.
know a lot of guys have like the plastic or like the sumo thumb or whatever it's called.
Yeah. They
Um,
got that
or
or the
like a brace
Evo
inside.
Shield, the little
Yeah,
Evo Shield
yeah.
or custom. Yeah.
But I've never used one of those. So
All right.
um, it's just
And
me though.
yeah. And then do you use the Maverick chest pad?
No, I actually used the STX one. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. I think we're fine. I used the
Yeah.
STX Shield because I used it all in high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it's worked great for me. I thought I tried the Maverick one on, and I thought it was too big. It was really big, and I was like, I can't do this. So
Yeah.
I just switched back, and
Now, how does that
I,
work
I
if
like it.
if you are a sponsored school by Maverick? Do you have to like ask your equipment manager to go get it specially or like what how does that work?
I don't I don't know. I don't know if like I don't know if I'm pretty sure it's fine.
We don't have
But
to
it was
talk
just
about it
like
if you don't want.
no, like I I don't know how the contract works or anything, but like
Yeah,
my coach is like, yeah, it's fine if you wear that. Like,
got it.
if you're more comfortable, we don't really care. So
Yeah.
um,
What about the jock? I know I one goalie pinged me. He's like, "Hey, I like Anderson's style. Could you ask him what jock he
yeah,
wears?"
so I actually I wear two cups. I have a nutty buddy on the bottom, and then I don't know, it's like the plastic one, and I wear like a girdle with that, and then a hockey cup. I don't know the actual name. It's like I want to say Bauer, but
I
that's like
think it
the
is
wrong
Bauer.
company.
Yeah, like the ice
It was
hockey.
some, yeah, it's like an ice hockey cup.
Yeah,
So I wear the nutty butter underneath and then the ice hockey cup on top, and it's been great. Like it doesn't really prohibit like my movement at all or anything like that. Like it's
taking
just
no
extra.
chances. No
Yeah,
chances.
no. My brother actually put me onto that. He said he wore it all in high school
Yeah,
and he had no issues. And I think a hockey cup is a must. Like you can't play lacrosse. Can't play goalie without a hockey cup. The
yeah.
second one might be a little overkill, but it's just like I can't not wear it at this
Well,
point.
given
So
what's at stake, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know if it's overkill or not. But yeah, I know some goalies that do the double cup and then some just go with the
Mhm.
ice hockey. But yeah, and it also provides you a little bit of like I don't even know what that area is called, but like there's a little like pad above the cup too, like the upper part,
Yeah, it's like your lower like below your belly button.
Yeah, yeah.
A
So, there you
little
go.
bit of padding there. My
Yeah.
chest pad doesn't go down that low, so I
Right. Right, right,
just
right.
gotta tank it if you get hit there.
Wow. Awesome, Anderson. Well, thanks again so much for coming on the
Yes,
show.
thank you.
Good luck upcoming season. If you had to
Mhm.
leave the goalies out there with a final piece of advice, what would that be?
Just have as much fun as you possibly can with this position, and if you have as much fun, you'll come out of that position, you come out of games, and you'll just feel a lot better about it than if you chose to be negative and not have fun. So it's
Love it,
kind of
man.
it's
Love
my
it. Awesome
go-to.
stuff.
Yes.
Take care.